Hello, welcome to another episode of Farm Your Yard. I'm Carrie, and today we're out here in our outdoor classroom at Columbia's Agriculture Park. It's really hot out here today, and so we're watering all of these raised beds with our drip irrigation system. So today we're going to talk about how to make the most of the water from your hose because plants need a lot of water to grow big and productive for you in your garden. Today we're going to talk about 3 ways that you can water using water from the spigot or the hydrant in your yard. The first way we're going to go over is drip irrigation, which is what we have on this little bed of baby carrots. We're also going to go over a homemade clay pot watering system that's a really nice and low-tech way to water your garden all summer long. And the third way we're going to go over is if you're not into the investment of the drip irrigation or don't want to do the clay pot watering system and you're just watering with by hand with your hose, which is totally cool, there's best practices for that. So we're going to go over the best practices for watering your garden with a regular hose from your spigot. On average, vegetables need about an inch of rain a week. Here in Missouri, we get roughly 36 inches of precipitation all year round. So that means we need to add a little bit of water to our garden beds to make up for what the sky doesn't produce. Because your plants need extra water, it's really important to water with your hose. But at the same time, you don't want to be wasteful. So let's jump into ways that you can conserve the water from your hose on your garden. So this drip irrigation system that we've got going right here is running as we speak. And it's dripping little droplets of water about every 6 inches down all 4 of these irrigation tubes. It really takes a long time to water thoroughly and deeply with a hose, and so by installing this drip irrigation system, we saved ourselves a lot of time in watering and also a lot of water, because watering through just droplets, dropping every second or so, is a lot more conservative than just pouring a hose over it. So for this drip irrigation system at the outdoor classroom, we have it connected to our hydrant. So the first thing we have is a timer. You don't need this for a drip irrigation system, but it's definitely helpful for us. So then below the timer, we have what's called a pressure regulator. So this is a really important component of a drip irrigation system. Usually the pressure that comes straight out of your house or out of your hydrant is way too strong for a drip irrigation system. So you need the pressure regulator to reduce that water pressure. Then after your pressure regulator, and if you need it, a filter, comes what we call the main line. So let's go see what that looks like. So the main line travels underground to each raised bed, and then you can see it pops out of the ground and travels right along the edge of the bed. And we have a valve here where we can turn the drip irrigation on each bed off and on as we please. This one's on. So then it just travels through these tubes, and then the drip line just hooks into the tubes and drips the water out 6 inches. We purchased all of the components for this drip irrigation system that we have set up in our outdoor classroom from a company called DripWorks, which you can access online, and they have lots of nice designs and kits that you can look at and purchase to help you set up your first drip irrigation system. Sometimes people are intimidated by setting up a drip irrigation system, but using DripWorks and their tools and their catalog, it makes it really user-friendly. Drip irrigation is probably the most conservative use of water as far as the 3 styles of watering we're going to talk about today go. So using a drip irrigation, a system that waters very slowly over a long period of time, waters very thoroughly and very deeply, meaning that the soil and the raised bed mix is thoroughly saturated with water, so it stays moister longer. And you retain all of the water that's actually dripping out of the drip tape without losing some to run off and it just running down the hill and not being taken up by our plants. So figuring out how long to run your drip irrigation system is kind of a trial and error basis. It also depends on how big your plants are in the raised bed. So this raised bed, like I said, it's full of baby carrots that are just germinating. So they only need, a little bit of water frequently to, be nice and healthy. Something that's large and mature, like the Swiss chard a couple beds down, or the sweet corn that's next door to this bed, need to be watered more thoroughly. So the best advice I can give you is run your drip irrigation system and then check with your finger like we've talked about. So stick it in the soil and see how far down the soil is moist. In this case, the soil is moist, a couple inches down from the drip tape being on for about 30 minutes. So just check and tweak your timing as your plants require throughout the season. So now that you know a little bit more about how to use a drip irrigation system in your garden, let's look at some other ways that you can use the water from your hydrant. Okay, now we're back in my own backyard garden where we're going to talk about two other ways to use hose water to irrigate your plants. Over here, I've got some sweet peppers that are doing pretty well, and I watered them with a very low-tech self-watering system called an Olla System. It's essentially a terracotta pot that I plugged the drainage hole with silicone caulk, and I fill the pot up with water whenever the pot is empty. Because terracotta is porous, the water flows out of the pot and throughout the soil when the soil is dry enough to require more moisture. So it really regulates its own watering needs without me doing anything except for filling the pots up when it's necessary. So actually my pots need filling today. They're pretty much empty. So I'm going to show you how I water these plants with this watering system. I have 5 8-inch terracotta pots buried along this bed, which is about 14 feet long. And each terracotta pot is 8 inches in diameter. And I tried to space it so that the pepper plants were about 1 foot to 1.5 feet away from each pot. I bury it enough so that there's maybe 1 inch or so lip sticking over the soil line. So I've got water catchment trays that cover up the pots, like here. And then I just put a brick on top of it, keeps it weighted down in a windstorm. So as you can see, my pot is pretty empty. So I'm going to take my hose and I'm going to fill it up. Since the soil appears to be a little bit drier, the pot is empty because the soil has drawn the moisture out of the pot. So I'm going to fill it up now with my hose. There is dirt and debris that falls into the pot over the season, so it does get kind of dirty in there, but I haven't experienced any issues with that. Now that the pot's pretty much full of water, I'm going to put the cap back on and the brick. I'm going to fill up the next one. I would do that, continue on down the whole bed with the rest of the 5 pots. And now the pepper plants and the soil that the pepper plants are growing in will draw the water out of the pots as the soil requires and as the plants draw it out of the soil. So there's absolutely no way that you can overwater your plants in this system. If, let's say, it rained a whole bunch just last night and the soil is really moist, what would happen is if I opened my pots up, the pots would be full of water still. If there's a lot of moisture in the soil, the pots remain full of water, or at least partially full of water, and as the soil dries out, the moisture from the inside of the pot is pulled out of the pot from the sides and into the soil and then up into the plants. It's a really simple, really foolproof way to keep your garden beds or your raised beds really nice and watered. It's a great technique for if you're going on vacation or will be gone for a week and want to make sure that your plants are watered but don't have anyone to water them for you. I really recommend trying this out. Okay, and now we're going to talk about the third way that you can conserve water by watering with your hose. And I'm going to talk about it with these basil plants and these ground cherries. So these plants I just water with the hose when is required, but there are right and wrong ways that you can water with the hose, ways that you can be more conservative with the water, and ways that you can waste more water. So First things first, whenever you suspect you might need to water, it's always good to check it with your finger first. So what I like to do is stick my finger in the ground near the plant. So let's see what the soil tells us. So this is what my finger looks like after sticking it in until about the middle knuckle. It is a little damp under there, as you can see by, the dark smudges on my finger. If it were totally dried, I probably wouldn't even be able to get my finger in it at all because it'd probably be pretty hard. So I think I might water these a little bit because I want to enhance my basil crop. Now that I know that I want to water and that the soil is dry enough to, be watered, I'm going to wait until the evening, because then I allow the water to soak in to the soil and up the plant's roots all night. So it's evening now, so I'm going to water these basil plants because this is the best time to water. I'm going to turn my hose on, and I'm not going to just sit here and spray the hose so it's kind of watering this whole bed. I'm going to get it right down to the base of the plant. And usually what I like to do is just count to a certain number. Usually it's 15 or 30. So I'm going to just turn the hose on, count to 15, and then I'm going to turn it off, let it soak in a little bit, and then recheck the soil moisture. So let's do that. That's probably enough for this basil plant. Now I can move on and do the exact same thing to the next basil plant, going all the way down the row. The reason why I choose to water just the base of the plant instead of kind of like a shower or using a sprinkler even, is because a lot of that water, when you kind of direct the flow of water higher up, is lost to wind. Even at this time of day, a little bit of evaporation happens. While plants do like some moisture sometimes on their leaves, they don't take in most of their moisture through their leaves. So it's kind of putting a valuable resource like water in places that can't be utilized for the plants. So if you do it right at the base of the plant, it's where it's most useful to the plant, and thus saves you a little bit of cost on your water bill and also saves water, which is an important component. Watering is a really important gardening task. Our plants need a lot of water to make beautiful, productive fruits and vegetables for us. But water is also a really valuable resource that we don't want to just waste. So it's really important to know what the best choices you have as a backyard gardener are when using water from your hose. So I hope that this video was helpful in kind of giving you some ideas about how you can water your backyard garden maybe more effectively. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.